Today's agenda, we are going to discuss about vCenter server. We are going to cover the components which makes a vCenter server. So basically, there's an element called platform services controller, which is built into the vCenter. So the way how we install it is basically we get choice when we are doing the installation whether you want to have an embedded one or you can have an external one. Now VMware went in two different directions. So it did basically give the user the opportunity to have it embedded within the same virtual machine, and also they gave a choice to the user if they wanted to keep it separately from the vCenter server. Now, having said that, in the latest release of vCenter server, they are recommending that we keep it embedded. So they are discontinuing the external PSC configuration. So that's going to phase off, I guess, in the next releases. So everything will be in one virtual machine only. So the PSC and the vCenter server will be in one virtual machine. Okay, so again, how to download it? We log into VMware website, and then we go through. We will learn how to install vCenter server. And I don't know whether vCenter website is working today, but we can have a quick look. So let's discuss what exactly is platform services controller. So platform services controller was introduced in vCenter 6.0, which is which is still running because we are running 6.7 and this course is all about 6.7. So they introduced it when they when 6.0 was launched, I guess. Yeah. So the platform services controller is responsible for infrastructure security functionality. There's an element for vCenter for single sign-on. It looks after the licensing and the certificate management, and obviously there are a lot more to it. But I can point you to my blog, which goes through what responsibility the PSC has. So it would have made sense because it has so many responsibilities. So they wanted to isolate it on a different virtual machine. But also, if you choose, you can have it integrated within the vCenter server. Okay, so let's see. And again, Windows vCenter server is also available if you want to install it. But if you want to keep the VCSA, which is what we will be doing, which is a vCenter server appliance, that is why it's called VCSA, vCenter server appliance. The vCenter server is a proprietary OS which is designed by VMware themselves. Is called Photon. That's a typo there. It's a Photon OS. Okay, so how does it look like, the embedded one? So vCenter server and embedded platform services controller. So you have the vCenter server, and if you choose to embed it, so you have one virtual machine and you have platform services controller and the vCenter server running in here. Okay, so this is the external setup. So you have the vCenter server and you have another machine with platform services controller. And as I said, external platform services controller, if you choose to install a platform services controller, it is already saying depreciating soon. So this is why VMware themselves is not suggesting to have it on a different virtual machine. When we go in deep dive installation, it's all about how many virtual machines you're going to have eventually connected to that vCenter server. How many hosts are connected to that vCenter server. And this is very critical when designing this vCenter server, because later on in the time, if you did not make a right choice and you thought, okay, I only need a small instance, I won't be going above 100 hosts, and then later on in the day, if you have grown over 100, then you'll see performance issues. You will see issues which your vCenter will start struggling because it was designed or built based on the requirement which was around 100 hosts as opposed to 150 hosts. So this is very important that we basically keep in mind the future growth of your data center when you're basically installing a vCenter server. So During the installation, obviously you'll find certain options. So the first option you'll find when doing the deployment type is a tiny one, which is what we have running in our environment at the moment, which has the capability of going up to 10 ESX hosts and 100 virtual machines. And the recommendation for the vCenter server, because obviously it's a virtual machine again, it's 2 CPUs and 10 gig memory. As you can see, this is not even though it's tiny, it's requiring 10 gig memory. So this is not a small virtual machine which you can, just deploy it on. It's quite heavy. Even the tiny instance is also quite heavy. That's what I want to say. So the smaller one obviously supports up to 100 hosts and 1000 virtual machine, but the CPU requirement will be 4 virtual CPUs and 16 gig memory. The medium one supports up to 400 ESX host, and also it supports 4000 virtual machine, but the configuration of the VM has to be 8 gig CPU and 24 gig memory, and so on. For the large one, 1000 host, 10,000 machine, and the X large one, 2000 host and 35,000 virtual machine, which need to be 24 CPUs and 48 gig of memory. Are we all clear with that? Shall we move on to the next topic? Yeah, I assume everyone is happy with that. So if there is no response, I will move to the next topic. The installation option now. So installing for for fresh installation, basically you get 3 options when you start the installation. So you get the install option for fresh installation, the upgrade option when you're upgrading from version 6 or version 5 to 6.7, and then we get the W with the migrate option, which is when you are actually having a vCenter server running Windows, running on a Windows OS, and you are migrating a server which is running vCenter server running on a Windows OS to the new vCenter server, which is the 4-town one. And then lastly, we have a restore option, which is for corrupt vCenter servers. So these are the 4 options available. Again, when we are doing any sort of planning, when we are installing a vCenter server or a ESX host, or when you are basically building a greenfield data center, it's always very important to check what are the configuration, what are the limitations around your specific product which you're choosing. So I would strongly suggest you guys to keep hold of this configmax.vmware.com. This gives you the maximum supported configuration which is available at any product. So it's a handy website. We can go through it and I can quickly show you how useful it can become very quickly. So let's get started. Let's show you. So let's log into VMware website. Last time we were unable to download the ESX host, but let's see whether we'll be able to do it today. As I said, to download the vCenter server, go to VMware, click download, go to vSphere. Over here, as you can see, we have all the products, and what we are interested is vCenter server. So why not? We can go for vCenter server 6.7 U3A. Go to download. It will ask you obviously to log in. And here you find that my trial is expired because I have downloaded it. I do not have, this account does not have permissions. So what we can do, you will see this message if you have if you don't have permissions, if you don't have a product added in your account. But over here you can see download trial, so click on that. It already on my machine, so I'll show you how to install it. So once it is downloaded, you'll be having it obviously on your local disk. You need to be able to connect to it. So once you are able to connect to it, this is the vCenter 6.5. Do I not have 6.7? Yep. So this is the 6.7, and as you can see, the size of the file. So VCSA is the vCenter server appliance. So it's around about 4 gig actually. Anyway, so what we have to do here is mount the disk on your computer or wherever you are installing it from. So consider this, you have a green field, you don't have any vCenter server at all in your environment. All you have is basically you have your first ESX host which you have installed, and you're going to use that ESX host and you're going to install the vCenter server on that ESX host. Installer, this is the one we are looking for, Windows, and at the bottom you have the installer. So what are we going to do? So we already have this Dell Optiplex server, ESX server, physical server, which I have, which is my ESX server which I have installed. And as I showed you last time, we installed a ESX server, right? So this is the installer as it opens, and we have the 4 options here: install, upgrade, migrate, and restore. So in this instance, as we all know, we are going to install the vCenter server. I can see some more people have joined. Ubaid has joined here. So okay, so we click on installation. So where are we going to install it? I guess I will be installing on our ESX host. So deploy, this is what we are doing. So there are 2-stage process. Stage 1 is deploying the virtual machine, and stage 2 is configuring the application. Okay, at this point I need someone to chat to me. Let's have a conversation and understand what you guys know, and like to see, the session has to be two-way. I can't just talk and explain. It's going to be a YouTube video you can watch if it's something like that. So if someone wants to have a debate, I'll explain you a little bit more. Ubaid, are you having a microphone there? Hello?
I do have a microphone.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. So what I wanted to say was, so just to give you a clear picture, we have already got, so this is a green field. We don't have anything installed in our environment. We just got the first ESX server running. Let's assume my Dell Optiplex is that ESX server. Okay. On there, what we are doing is we are installing our first vCenter server. So we downloaded it from the vCenter website, and then we went in and then we just mounted it on our local computer, and then we opened the installer, and here we are. So we chose the install option, which was the first one, and then here there are 2 stages. The first one is the virtual machine which is created, and the second one is setting up the virtual machine. Now this basically sometimes require troubleshooting, so we will attempt to install the vCenter server. It won't be as simple as we did last time with the ESX host, but let's give it a shot. So end user agreement, you need to accept it, click on next. So Ubaid, I don't know whether you missed this session in the beginning. So vCenter installation is requires you to have a selection whether you want to have a platform services controller. What that does is it manages certificates. Platform services controller manages the SSO, the certificates, and so many other components for the vCenter server. So in 6.0 they basically separated the platform services controller, and they gave an option to the user to have it on a different virtual machine or have it within the virtual machine like we have here. So vCenter server, and within the same virtual machine we have PSC. Over here we have a vCenter server, and it is a separate one. But over the course of versions from 6.0 to 6.5 to 6.7, which we are doing today, they decided that it's not worthy to have platform services controller separate. So they are not suggesting it anymore. That is why they have said over here depreciating soon. So any further installations which we are doing or VMware will bring with the vCenter server, it will only have embedded platform services controller. So this is called embedded and this is called external. Have I made myself clear? Yeah, there are two components for it. Okay, so we are going to obviously follow what VMware suggests. This is depreciating, so we are not going to follow that. We'll use the embedded one. Now the first thing it is asking the IP address of the host, 192.168.0 actually .1.99, I think, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, that's the one. And also we log into the host to see, keep an eye on our tasks, so it would make a good idea to see how our progress is. So let's log into the ESX host here. To keep it very nice and clean, I have powered off all the virtual machines which are running. As you can see, everything is off. Yeah, and this is the ESX host we are connected. This is not the ESX host which we did the installation last time, but this is the physical ESX host. This is the Dell Optiplex 7010 which I was talking about. It has 4 CPUs and 32 gig memory. So over here we are going to install a new vCenter server. So let's go back to the installation where it was asking the IP address. So this is the port we need. We need to give the root account. So remember when we did the ESX installation last week, we created a root user and we gave a password. So that's what we need to remember. When you click next, it will ask a thumbprint and you need to accept it. Now it's going to validate the settings that you have the right password and you have the right permissions to install this vCenter server. Okay, what is happening here? What is the IP? Let's go back to the Windows machine. 192.168.1.99. Okay, so it has accepted the login. So the password was wrong in the first instance, I guess. So this is the configuration for your new vCenter server. So set up Appliance VM. So what is the name you need to you want to give? So we can call it vCenter hyphen WX for WebEx. Yeah. By the way, guys, the session is going to expire in turn off in 5 minutes. If you want to see the installation, I'll restart the session as quick as possible. Just rejoin and then we'll finish the installation quickly. And that's going to be the topic for today. So the session is going to expire in 5 minutes, I think, and we'll restart the session. Okay, so vCenter WX, let's keep it that way, 01 maybe. Set a root password. Okay, and then click next. Oops, sorry, I skipped a thing. So we set the root password. So this is the other thing which I was talking about. Over here you have a chart which says what is the configuration you need. So in short, basically what this is this is important for you. This is very important for you to understand what instance you are going to create. So if you are saying that in today I might need around about I'll be installing around about 50 ESX hosts, then in the future maybe I'll increase it to another 25, and my virtual machine is not going to go over 1000 virtual machines, then this is your option, small. Whoops, not all of them, small. But if you think the organization you're working on, they have more than 100 hosts, then this is going to be your option. But you think they are not going to grow over what you call 400, then stick to medium. Yeah. And also obviously don't think that, oh, who cares, let's go to the maximum. But then if you're going to the maximum, then you need a lot of physical memory as well, and a lot of CPUs. So be mindful. Obviously 24 CPUs to a virtual machine is very heavy, and also giving away I don't know, just 1 second guys. ट्रिपल बैटरीज नहीं है लेना, वहाँ मिले तो वहाँ पर मिलती है आपको ड्रॉअर में, वो थर्ड या सेकंड में क्या था. Okay. Sorry guys, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so in this instance again we are going to go through Tiny and then click on next. Have a look at here. So it's saying about memory, CPU, memory, and also storage. So this is the disk which is actually going to be used on your storage. So this 300 GB is a lot, and as it goes to large, it's asking for nearly around 1 terabyte, which is a lot as well. So be mindful of all these things when you're installing. And we are going to select the local disk, which is going to be 1 terabyte disk, which I have on here. Make sure you enable thin provisioning. As I discussed, thin provisioning enables you to leverage a lot of your disk. So whenever you're writing on the disk, or you create a virtual machine, say for example you created a virtual machine and you assigned 10 GB file to it, but actually you're only writing 2 gig of data in it. So if you are using thin mode, then the disk will only use thin mode, which is going to be only around 2 GB. But if you did not select this option which we have here, which is thin mode, then it will basically allocate all the 10 gig, and that 8 gig could have been used somewhere else efficiently, but you have already reserved it, so you don't get to use it then. So that's why VMware allows you to over provision your storage, your CPU, your physical memory as well, the RAM which we call. So make sure you select this and leverage these things. Next, okay, so we are going to assign it to a network, which is VM network. IP address is static, which is fine. Fully qualified domain name, which will be vCenter hyphen wx hyphen 01. An IP address. So I have to come up with an IP address, 22.168. Okay guys, welcome back. So we are going to enter an IP address 192.168.1.75 maybe. Subnet mask 255.255.255.0. My gateway, and the gateway will be the DNS for the moment. I can use 8.8.8.8. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So I'm going to stick to IP address because I do not have a DNS server running at this moment, and I know for sure if I give an IP address it will fail. If I give a name there it will fail. So all we have done is we have selected which network it is going to connect at the back. Welcome back, Asher. So what we have done is I have just gone through and filled all the details. We have set which network it needs to connect to. IPv4 is what we are going to give today. So a static IP address, this is the IP I have come up with, and make sure it's not used anywhere else. So I'm just going to ping it and check it myself. Looks like it's not been used, it's unreachable, so that's good. So the IP address, the fully qualified name, I have changed it to the IP address because I do not have a DNS server running within my lab, and I do not want the installation to fail because it might fail because it doesn't find a DNS server. The other thing is the gateway. So these are all configuration related to my lab. Okay, so when you're working in your organization, you might need to stick it to a particular VLAN, and you might need to get the IPs from your network team maybe, or you might need to ask someone who knows which IP to assign it to. Sorry, can you repeat that? Who's that?
Yeah, this is Ashar. Ibrahim, one question.
Yeah, go for it.
FQDN, can you explain?
Fully qualified domain name. So fully qualified domain name basically means normally, if again most of you guys know where I work anyway, but if say for example I work for an organization and it's called let's come up with a name, Orange, a mobile company maybe, yeah, Orange or Telefonica. Let's say Telefonica, who knows. So basically you will come up with vCenter -01 dot telefonica.co.uk. That's the fully qualified domain name. So it has the server name dot the main domain name. So when it has the main domain name along with it, it's a fully qualified domain name. So if I set up an Active Directory account within my lab and I call it maybe agileops.com, then my vCenter server will be vCenter -01 dot agileops.com. So that will be my fully qualified domain name. And the reason for that is that needs to be resolved as well. So if I go on my command prompt and then I type ping agileops.com, it should respond and it will say this name is pointed to this IP. So the DNS, the job for the DNS, I guess you all know what is DNS. DNS means domain name service. Yeah, so this is the domain name. DNS, when you look up the domain name, it goes and find out which IP address it's assigned to, and it resolves that name. So if I want to resolve well, I don't have a DNS running as I said earlier, but if I want to resolve a company name, ns lookup, let's say I want to resolve can't think of any good, let's say orange again .com. So the DNS gave me the IP address, and that's the IP address for the orange.com. So that basically is here, down here. But for you to have DNS server, you need to have DNS server within your organization, which you will do, of course, if you're working for a bigger company. But internally in my lab, I don't have one. And the reason I have put the IP address is because I know for sure I have done this installation several times, and if you do not have a fully qualified domain name working with a DNS server, it will not work, it will fail. So let's go to the next step, which is the reviewing part. So this is your target ESX host, this is the name of the virtual machine, and this is what we have decided. We have a vCenter server with an embedded platform services controller. The instance we are installing is tiny, as we agreed, because I don't think we'll be going over 10 ESX host and 100 virtual machine. This is the data stroke selected, and these are specific details to network which we just went through. So the IP address, the system name, and the subnet mask. Asha, do you know the concept of network? Like, obviously, do you know what is the need for the subnet mask, and what is the need, like, you know, the IP address side of it? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, can you tell me about subnet mask, please? Why it is used?
Okay, so that's have you do you know? Okay, so subnet mask is basically segregating the network. Okay, so this subnet mask allows you to have 254 computers, because you can see there are 4 octets here. Each one of them will represent how many computers you can have. This network here is running in a class C network, which is class C, which is because we are running in a lab. This is a class C network. But what happens is the subnet mask, you need to, if you want, I can send you some link. You need to understand, although you're going to be working as a VMware administrator, but you need to have a basic understanding of what is an IP address, what is a DNS, what is a subnet mask, what is a gateway. Do you know what is a gateway?
No.
Okay, the gateway is where you're going to talk, how you're going to talk to. So this computer of mine is not directly connected to the vCenter server. We have a gateway, which is a router in middle, and the router basically is this IP address. So the router basically gets the packet which I'm sending, and it will forward it to the right computer, and then the same, when I request something, then it will forward it back to me. So that's the job for the gateway. Basically, that's the way how you're connecting to the internet, because your router at home, wireless router, is having a gateway, and that gateway basically allows you to talk to the outside world. So you need to have all these things. These are very mandatory. You need to have an IP address, a subnet mask, a gateway, a DNS. These are mandatory for you to have to be able to configure an IP a system. You can set it to DHCP, which means it will automatically get an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway, a DNS. But that is only if you are having a DHCP network. But I'll assure you, if you're working in a server environment, no one will give a server a dynamic IP address. The reason for that is dynamic IP address will change after 3 hours or 3 days. And if you are running a vCenter server, you do not want your IP to change. You need to be certain that where your vCenter server, which your vCenter server IP is. So this is why you need to have a good understanding of having a static IP address. Okay, let's move on. So let's click finish, which I did just now, and there you go. The installation is started. Let's see how it goes. To monitor the installation, we can go back to the ESX host, which is here. As I said, there are 2 parts of the installation. The first part is deploying the appliance, which is the vCenter appliance, and the second part is the configuration one. And over here you can see there is a import vapp task started, and it's doing from root, which is fine, because this is what I use the root account to connect to the ESX host, and you can see that it is 3% done already. So that's the vCenter server installation which has started. So I think we have missed some more inventory stuff here, that's why it's only from here. But let's click on virtual machine. So this is the 11th virtual machine which has been created. There you go, it has been created here, and the name, as you can see, vCenter WX01. but obviously it is going to take time to build. And where are we at? So it's at 12%. So once this installation goes through, basically all it is going to do is install the vCenter appliance server, which is running Photon OS. On top of that, the second phase which I discussed is going to configure the vCenter server, the platform services controller, the SSO side, which we need to discuss, which we didn't discuss in this one. So we'll discuss those sort of things. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay, Asher, you have any questions about what do you call the IP addresses or subnet? You can shoot at me and we can have a chat, because this installation is going to take time anyway.
No, for now, I'm good.
Okay. Are you aware of what are the different classes of network, Asher?
I think I'm not sure, but IPv4 and IPv6, is that one?
So IPv4, the funny thing about IPv4 and IPv6 is I've been hearing that IPv4 is going to disappear since 1999, and today we are in 2019. That's when I did my Microsoft certification back in 1999. So the guy who was teaching me at that point was talking about IPv6 in 1999. And he was saying that, oh, I'm very certain in 2000, in next year we are going to in year 2000 we'll start using it.
Happened, right?
Pardon?
Like it's been 20 years, but it didn't have upgrade to
Well, it has
IPv4.
happened. It has happened for sure, but not everywhere, right? Obviously, Amazon uses IPv6. I'm going to search for it. There you go. So we have successfully completed the installation, and our ESX server is available on this IP address. Let's click on continue. So as you can see, we are back on the same installer page, and this part, the stage 1 is green tick, which is good. And then now we are going to configure the advanced options for configuring this appliance. One thing we can check now is if we go back to our ESX host, which is here, you can see the appliance has already been powered on, and it has already got the IP address 175, which we have given it. Does it make sense? So it's nearly there. So all we have to do now is do the remaining configuration now. Where's my installer? Oh, here it is. So click on next. So it's asking whether you want to synchronize the time with an NTP server or the ESX host. Already my ESX host has the NTP settings, so I can give the ESX host. You guys know what the NTP server means? Ubaid, you should know that, right? Asher, do you know that?
Ibrahim, I do, yeah. Thank you.
Kya bole? You know it, right, Ubaid?
I do, Ibrahim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Okay, Asher, do you know what is NTP? Hello, Asher. Okay, so NTP is a network time protocol. So basically it keeps track of the time, and that is very important when you're working with databases and everything else. So I have clicked on next, and now it is asking me for a SSO or a domain name. So the SSO domain always need to have, can you see this, guys, vsphere.local written here? Can you see that? Can you see that? It's like a watermark, but it says vsphere.local. So what we have to do is we have to come up with a SSO name. So the name can be anything. So I can just say agile ops dot vsphere dot local. This is very important. This vsphere dot local is needed every time. This SSO domain name has to be, it's mandatory. You cannot remove vsphere dot local. However, what you can do is you can add, if it is a lab environment, lab.vsphere.local. If it's a test environment, test.vsphere.local. If it's a UAT environment, UAT dev, so you can have dev dot, and if it's your production, you can have live.vsphere.local. Another important thing, if you have two vCenter servers and you want to share the SSO, you can do that by installing another vCenter server. When it gets to this point, you need to specify join an existing SSO domain. Okay, you select join an existing SSO domain, and then you specify the details for that SSO domain, which will be literally what is the name of that vCenter embedded platform controller. If it's an embedded one, you have to give the IP for the vCenter server. If it's not an embedded one, you have to give the IP address for the external PSC, and then you just give the vsphere.local domain, the administrator at vsphere.local password. So over here there are two things. You set the root password already, but there is a SSO password which you need to remember, which is the single sign-on password. Only then you can add this PSC and this PSC and join the SSO domain. So that means if you log into this vCenter, you can see the virtual machines which are running on this vCenter as well, because it's a single sign-on. Does it make sense, boys? Yeah. But over here we are not going to join, we are going to create a new SSO. So let's set up, and if I forget this, I will be in trouble. So I need to take note of this. From the password, it doesn't match as expected. Okay, so password done. Next, I just need to finish the installation. I do not want to join the customer experience. Thank you very much. Click next. Ready to install. So what we have done, what is this page? So it has already done these things which we have done in the previous configuration. So the only new things we have done is down here, guys. So we have opted out for customer experience. We have given a domain name, which is the SSO domain name, and we have given administrator password. That's all we have done. Click finish, and you will not be able to pause or stop the installation, which is fine. Click OK and let it configure the box. So it's going to go through the stage 2 of the installation. Okay, so guys, we have successfully installed the vCenter server. The stage 2 has completed successfully, and we got an address. The address basically says photon-machine, but we know the IP address, so we need to log in using the IP address. So I'm just going to go back and refresh the page. There you go. Let's try the old client first. So we'll log into the HTML one. The SSO password is edministrator at agileops.local, right? I think that's what we gave. Yeah, vsphere.local. There you go. It was wrong, something was wrong there. So again, this is the SSO username and password. Until and unless you did do integration with LDAP or Active Directory, when you do that, then you can use your Active Directory details. If not, then you have to have your own, you have to use the administrator at vsphere.local. Always make sure you remember the password which you have kept. So we are going to successfully log in on our brand new vCenter server. There you go. And this is the one which we installed on 192.168.1.75. As you can see, okay, maybe add it. So as you can see, it has no inventory, well, nothing in the inventory, CPU, memory, everything is quite low because it doesn't have any history there. This is our brand new vCenter server with no ESX. So what we do first is very important. So this is a greenfield, right? So it doesn't even have a data center. So first we create a data center. Call it whatever you want. So we can call it London DC 01. Okay, data center 01 in London. And then within that you can have a cluster. Cluster name is, maybe this is a demo cluster, demo 1 cluster, and then you can choose whether you want DRS, HA enabled or not. This is one of the questions which you might get in exam. What can you enable when you create a new cluster? What options you can have? So you can have DRS, HA and vSAN. You can enable and disable this. If you're not doing vSAN, we can have these options enabled if you want. But at this moment we don't have anything in the cluster, so let's just create the cluster. So this is how the cluster is created. It's quite simple and straightforward, right? Just right click away. So let's try and add our ESX host. I know it's added to the other vCenter server, but let's see what happens. So 192, what's the IP address of that host? Do you remember? 105. 105 है ना, last time अपन installation जो करे थे.
I don't know.
यहाँ सामने दिख रहा ना. So
192.168.105.
let's add
Starting
192.168.1.105, username root. So because this is the first time we are adding a host in the cluster, we got the option of, you know, adding all the hosts one by one, and if you have the same root password, you just say use the same credential for all the hosts. समझ रहे ना? Makes your life easy, right? And then click on next. There you go, it's picked up the host and you have got first. Okay, that's fine, it has a warning. And there you go, that's our host coming up online. We'll deal with the warning later. So that's about it, guys. So this is the first time we install our vCenter server, and we have added created a data center and a cluster, and then we have added a ESX host successfully. The host is on maintenance mode. We can exit maintenance mode here. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed the session.